Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining the Boardroom Club today. My name is Álvaro Jiménez. I'm a first year here at Cornell, and I'm joined by my classmate and good friend, Yossi Garmazi.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
So today we have the pleasure of interviewing Shmulick Yoskovitz, one of the most prominent figures in the shipping and logistics world. Shmuel is the CEO of Express Feeders, the global leader of neutral feeder service in the world for containerized cargo, operating more than 100 container vessels, moving over 6.5 million containers across the globe in 163 ports. Shmulik, it's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you for inviting me. My pleasure to be here.
So, Shmulik, I want to start by asking you a few questions about your career, how you got into shipping, where did you go, and later on move to a Q&A section with questions submitted by the audience ahead of time. That sounds okay with you.
Yeah,
We can,
sure.
all right, so we can start with the beginning. So first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to the shipping and logistics world in the first place?
Okay. Actually, it's I'm born in Haifa in Israel, and my father worked for Zim. We were expats in Montreal for a while in the 80s. I joined the army in 87 and then got injured. I got shot and went afterwards. I left the army and studied in the Technion. I finished in 92. I was mostly busy playing wheelchair basketball rather than thinking about my career. And my father persuaded me to join Zim. 92 was not a great year in Israel to get a job. And I applied for Zim and got rejected for being in planning and development. And there was a job open in the financial control, and I joined Zim there as financial control, which I have to say I was very, very lucky to start there because it gave me a very good understanding of the basic cost and profit drivers of the shipping industry, and probably thanks to this I'm here now. Yeah, and so I joined Zim in '92. Was there until 2016 in Haifa, and from 2006 to 2012 I was in Hong Kong as the financial director for Asia. And then I was heading a business unit called Gold Star Line, mainly for intra-Asia and Asia-Africa trade. And in 2016, I left and joined Express as a CFO. And in 2020, just as COVID was breaking, I was nominated as CEO.
So that's an amazing summary, and you've gone through Middle East, Africa, Asia, and when you join Express Feeders as CFO, you go to a company that has hubs in all these continents and Americas too. So how do you deal with managing a company that has multiple time zones? I suppose your Outlook calendar is your best friend.
Yes, exactly. It's a lot of first of all, I want to say that Express Feeder, the way we manage things is we give a lot of authority to our business units. So I don't want to seem as if I'm running the day-to-day of our business units. We have very, very capable managers. So my job is more on the asset side, and our business units in the different geographies are running the business. Of course, I need to be available all the time. You learn how to live with that. I was in Hong Kong with a headquarter in Israel, which is terrible because all your meetings are in the evening. And now you start the morning early and you end when you end. It's fine. I
Okay,
enjoy it,
so
by the way, not a complaint.
you like it. Okay. So, yeah, you mentioned it 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, the beginning of the pandemic, you were appointed CEO. I remember we talked a lot at that time. It was a very interesting time. There was a lot of shocks. Can you tell us, from your point of view, how this was for Express?
Yes. it started very scary. Express was not an asset-heavy company. One of the great successes of Express in the years following the financial crisis was the fact that it was asset-light, and charters of vessels were short-term and relatively cheap, which gave us unbelievable flexibility. And when I joined, and as a CFO, we had a very, very conservative balance sheet. And since we were quite profitable during the 2010s, we had a good war chest, and vessel asset prices were cheap. So we started to buy assets. And our biggest investment till 2020 was buying 5,000 TEU vessels, wide beams. These vessels that I liked very much when I was operating in Gold Star Line, and I pushed to buy. We bought 6, 3 outright and 3 in partnership, and they were second hands, not new ones, but the delivery was sometime in the beginning of 2020, and then the pandemic hits, and cargo just doesn't move. It was really trying times. We had one vessel sitting out in Singapore for 4-6 weeks with no employment. It wasn't fun. But then, of course, cargo started to pick up, and I'm sure everybody started to be interested in shipping since then, and trade was good. It was unbelievable luck to have these assets during the pickup of COVID. And it was amazing. Just one other thing on COVID and IT. My first Teams call ever was when India went into a lockdown. So it was probably end of March 2020. We were extremely lucky that we changed our head of IT a year back, and he moved us to the cloud, or else it would have been a disaster.
Mhm.
So
It was something similar that happened to me in CFS. A lot of parallels. We had moved to Teams as a trial, and the whole team was already working on it. And thanks to that, we could do these systems and upgrades without any issues. So you talked about a major crisis and shocks, and now we're seeing similar shocks in the world, like the Red Sea disruption with the Houthis, and how that has rerouted multiple services around the Horn of Africa that before went through the Canal of Suez. So how does Express Feeder deal with these externalities that affect the cargo flows that you don't have a real control over?
I'll go back to what I said before about our business unit being very independent. So the way I look at it, they are like absorber shocks. They can act independently and relatively very quickly. These shocks are also opportunities. In general, I want to say, it might sound cynical and I apologize, but usually most crises are very good for shipping. So when we hear about disasters and crises, in general, shipping ends up somehow gaining from it. And in this one, it's not to the scale of the pandemic. And the major reason, by the way, the pandemic, and it's very important for people to understand the pandemic, the disaster or the logjam of container shipping mainly was not so much on the land, on the sea side. It was mostly on the land side, mostly in the US, where the infrastructure simply crumbled from the terminal. Well, it's a chain, but it's the truckers, terminal, rail, everything collapsed, and there was simply a big congestion to calling. And what we see here in the Red Sea crisis, that it took maybe 4 to 6 weeks, but now everything flows. It flows around the Horn of Africa. It takes a bit longer, but shipping now works perfectly. I think if you book now a container in China and want it in Europe, you will know exactly when you get it. It will take 2 weeks longer, but you will get it on time.
Exactly. So it says a lot about the resilience of supply chains and how effective it is, right, as a business compared to other infrastructure like the ports, right? When we were talking about that congestion that happened years ago. So I'm going to move a little bit more into the sustainability side of express feeders, which is something that has changed a lot in the past years with regard to sustainability. Now there is not only a mature plan to decarbonize from here to the next years, but we're seeing very material investments in greener vessels coming online. Can you talk a little bit about this strategy that Express has for the future?
Yeah. So in express feeder, one of the things that differentiate us, I think, from other companies is being privately owned by one single person, which makes decision making extremely simple. And we've grown considerably as a ship owner. And when we looked following the start of the pandemic and things started to pick up and our financial situation was quite good, we actually wanted to, we started to buy more assets. We've grew our fleet considerably. So from 2016, I think we owned something about 25 vessels maybe. Since then, we've grown. Today, we own more than 70 vessels. We have 15 vessels yet to be delivered, new builds. And in the meantime, we sold about 20 vessels. So all in all, we've grown our fleet to something from 25 to 100 vessels, if you count all the one that we sold during this time. And when you buy an asset like a vessel that needs to last for 20, 25 years, you need to think about what will happen in the long term. And you need to hedge your investment. The way we do it is we did it on a few vessels. We bought vessels that are dual fuel. There are a few types of potential green fuels in the future, ammonia, methanol, and LNG. I think it's important to explain what is maybe a green fuel. A green fuel is a synthetic fuel that you take green energy and turn it into a molecule, and then you burn it. So it's extremely, extremely expensive. We picked on our vessel, we are 14 vessels to be delivered from mid-May until 2026, dual fuel methanol vessels. We are not committed to methanol. We are agnostic to our fuels. The reason we picked methanol is it was methanol, you don't need to pressurize in order to liquefy it at room temperature. It is in liquid state, unlike LNG and ammonia. And this, when you need to liquefy, you need to bigger tanks, much bigger tanks. And we use feeder vessels, which are relatively small vessels. So it takes up relatively more space than on a bigger vessel. This is why we didn't pick LNG. Ammonia, we did not pick because we are worried that doing coastal feeding in Europe with a substance that is highly, highly toxic is an unknown. And that's why we picked ammonia. Let's see. I'm not sure how it is, just to give people the understanding. The cost of green methanol, which we will start burning in July in Europe, it is about 3 to 5 times more expensive per energy unit. And this will, of course, has to be translated into some kind of increased cost to the whole chain. or else it's unsustainable in the long term. We are going to try to burn green methanol on 2 vessels for the next 12 months, and let's see how this experiment works.
So you're having an experiment, a very expensive experiment, and
Yeah.
for this to work, I suppose that you need collaboration from principal clients. So the two that come to mind are Maersk and Evergreen. And incidentally, it wasn't Maersk who are always talking about sustainability, but Evergreen, the first one that approached you. Can you tell us a little bit of that about that dynamic? How did that happen?
Yes. I just want to say first about Maersk. I don't fault Maersk at all. There is no one in the industry making a harder effort to decarbonize. The thing is that you need, as I said, you need clients to pay for it. And in the current situation, it is very difficult to get clients to pay for it. And Maersk simply have access of CO2 credits. And there is a limit to how much money a company can spend even on an ideal. So Maersk are trying very hard, but the market is not ready for the scope of methanol or green fuels that Maersk are burning. We are extremely lucky and fortunate to get Evergreen, which is a Taiwanese company. And people talk a lot about how Europe is advanced and America is talking about decarbonizing. But actually, our first client willing actually to pay for green shipping, it's Evergreen, which is a Taiwanese company, again, family-owned company. I spoke to their CEO yesterday. I met him and thanked him very much. And he said, yeah, we need to start. If we don't start, we'll never reach there. And this is how we look at it. We need to start. We need to experiment. We've been extremely fortunate to go through a very good period financially. And we are lucky to have the ability to try things. And that's what we are doing.
Okay, so we've talked about how you make these decisions, how you invest or put actually you're doing a bet on the future of what's going to go, and you explain why you're not going with ammonia. That could be a problem. So we're moving a little bit into regulation, and we have the International Maritime Organization that has set up some sort of rules for the next decades to decarbonize shipping. So I have always a doubt in it. Like you mentioned before, we talk in America about decarbonization in Europe, and it turns out in Taiwan is where they're going to move first. But this speed of decarbonization is not going to be the same all over the world. So, what is your take on that? How can we do this in a reasonable way?
The most important thing for everyone to understand about decarbonization is it's going to cost money. And I think it is very important for governments and institutions not to eyewash people about some kind of miracle that the world will become green only because we want to. We need to invest, and us as customers need to understand that things will cost more. We've grown accustomed in the West to buy T-shirts for $5. To manufacture a T-shirt for $5, you need to move the products from China into a cheap place where you can make the shirt, which is Bangladesh today, and from there you need to move it to the US or to Europe. And this, first of all, we're talking about also in general ESG, right? So everyone knows how the conditions are. People are trying to change them, but the condition in these sewing places in Bangladesh. And second, you move this cargo through multiple areas, and you burn fuel to do it. I always tell my children when they talk to me about sustainability that you need to remember that vessels don't emit CO2, they don't contaminate, and neither do planes. When we decide to take a trip, then the plane emits CO2. If all of us will stay at home, CO2 planes will not fly and there will not be CO2 emitted. So we need to remember this as a base for the discussion. And for the regulators, the way I look at it, it is much more important. It's not more important. It is much more, will be easier for government to tax black fuels and equalize the cost of energy, of green energy and black energy, rather than subsidize green energy. Subsidizing green energy creates some kind of distortion somewhere. Always subsidies create distortion because people somehow learn how to manipulate it. And if we will tax black fuels and equalize the cost of energy, people will slowly or quickly transit to green fuels. And it's a saying, and I understand that it's very hard for governments to increase cost, but this is the base. I don't know if you remember, Álvaro, I think we probably talked about it a few years back when the VP Logistic of IKEA came out and said that she wants to move her cargo in green, but she doesn't want to pay more. Fine, so write a fairy tale. Don't run a company.
So there's a lot of, I suppose, yeah, a little bit of fairy tales, also a little bit of wishful thinking from some people. At the end of the day, it's going to cost money. I had this discussion with a consultant, and he said we're absolutely ready to move, but it's going to cost a lot of money, and that's what changed. What you're mentioning, that people have to make that switch. So in sometimes when we go online and we are going to purchase a t-shirt or whatever else on Amazon, sometimes you get the option of paying a little bit more to ensure that it's a small fee to decarbonize the transportation. Is this already happening in shipping? Can we pay a little bit more and say we want to load the cargo on X vessel so that it's a little bit greener than in Y vessel?
Yes, there is. In container shipping, most of the company, I don't know how others call it, but for example, Maersk are calling it green delivery. And so they, as I said, they are generating carbon credits on their methanol vessels. Today they have only one, but it's quite a big one, and they don't have enough clients. And they, if you want to ship cargo, even not on that vessel, they will transfer the carbon credits. It's all audited, and if you paid for it, they will give you to offset the carbon emission. And this is by the way, one of the difficulties. It's if you will go to our website, you will see that we colored our new builds in green. This is not our usual color of the vessels. The reason we've done it is because it's a psychological thing, and it's very interesting. People insist that it's very hard. What you describe as a carbon offset, it's very difficult to sell. People want to actually to have their container on the vessel that is carbon neutral. And I think this is a beginning. This will change in a few years, but it's a psychological barrier. And one of our clients recommended us to have the vessels be able to be identified. So we colored it differently. So people can actually take a nice picture and say, this is the vessel. She is not only burning green fuel, she also is green. We are not the only ones, by the way. CMA are doing it. Maersk have a different color scheme. So it's a lot of psychology. It's a lot of psychology because the basic thing, by the way, why very few of us are willing to pay for the extra cost of green containers or flights that are when airlines offer us offsetting is the way I'm thinking is we don't trust them. We see the offer, pay $5 more and we'll offset this. We don't trust them. And it's a matter of trust. It's very, very important. We need somehow to have an international governing board that will be able to certify that we will trust it. I mean us as consumers, and we will trust it, and we will be willing to pay. And by the way, it is not a lot. It's honestly not a lot. I'll give you an example of how it works. So we are going to start a green corridor between Rotterdam and Finland. The overall cost for us, we call it a slot cost, but the cost of shipping a container is increasing by 50%. It sounds a lot. And when you are a procurement manager, it sounds huge. But when you take the cargo value of what is in the container and you divide it by this extra 50%, the 50% is about $200 for a 40-foot container. Let's say if the commodity value is $10,000 easily, right, of a 40-foot container, this is nothing. It's 2-3%. And I'm sure that most of us would be willing to pay it. But when we come to the shop and somebody tells us that this glass or this whatever was shipped green or totally green, none of us will pay for it, or very few of us, I don't want to say none of us, because we don't believe it. If we will have some kind of chop on it, and we will trust this shop that this is green, on the commodity value, it's not a lot. Be very careful when you read the huge headlines about the cost of decarbonization, because it takes just the absolute cost of the shipping. It will increase, but you need to divide it by the value of commodities that we move. We move everything. 80% of whatever you buy in America moves on containers. Even if you say, okay, it is $500 billion a year, divided by the total cost, it's not that much.
It's a change of mentality. No, it's a little bit of psychology and a little bit of marketing. And
Yes.
before we move on to Yossi's side of the interview, I have one last question, because Express has also invested a lot in technology. I've seen it. It was incredible to see that department working. And now we have a revolution with AI. And I ask this to everybody. So how do you see AI affecting the shipping business?
Shipping there are two sides to it, okay? One, if let's talk about our main line, our clients, the main lines, their customer service and is a very heavy component of their service. If they can get AI right, this can revolutionize the service that they can provide to their clients, and this can actually give them, there is this endless fight for not market share, but margin share between the freight forwarders and the shipping lines. If a shipping line gets AI right, it might be able to finally make freight forwarders redundant or part of what they do, not all of it, and not all of freight forwarders, but this is something in the general industry. For us, I think it is more on the analytics. We are very nascent in analyzing our data, and I think this is where we can make a difference. We have huge data sets that currently we are quite blind to them. I think this can help us relatively in a quick way. If it really works as they say it, we are going to try a bit and see how it works.
That was amazing, Shmulick. Thank you so much. Yossi, your turn.
Yeah, so Shmulick, you ready for the tough questions or no? No, just kidding. So
now I'm sweating.
Yeah, I bet. So first question is that we noticed that there are a lot of joint ventures going on in the shipping industry, and specifically some of them even being imposed by the largest shipping company like Mars and so on. Can you tell us a bit, how do you navigate all of those joint venture negotiations?
Yes, so we have one of the ways that the shipping lines works. It's called a vessel sharing agreement, where we run vessels parallelly in a service. This enables us to get more cargo on a vessel. So let's say we have a 4-vessel service, and we deploy 2 vessels, and somebody else deploys 2 vessels. So we have a 50% share of each vessels of the 4. So we can load on 4 vessels, we can provide a better service, and it is a bigger vessel, so we have a higher critical mass where it reduces our slot cost. This is the logic of a vessel sharing agreement. It is extremely popular in the liner industry, and it grew from that vessel sharing agreement into the alliances. Today in shipping, there are 3 alliances that today serve probably 85–90% of the east-west trades. It's extremely difficult to run huge vessels as today, 20,000 TEU vessels, without having partners. We are, of course, much smaller. Our biggest vessels are 7,000 TEUs. But you can't, today in shipping, it's very difficult to operate without JVs. And we are very good at doing that because our clients are the main lines, which with them we also partner. So we do different deals with different clients. Sometimes we just sell them, but sometimes we run vessel sharing agreements and sell it to other clients. So we sell it to their competitors, but everyone gets a lower base cost.
Amazing. And you also touched a little bit about the prices previously with Álvaro about the prices of shipping. So obviously there has been a lot of fluctuation over the last years with geopolitical tensions, oils going up and down. As the CEO of a big, large company in the shipping industry, how do you navigate this? How do you prepare in terms of strategic viewpoint ahead of time for these kind of changes?
Today, we are as I said, we moved from being very asset light to today being asset heavy. First of all, this has implication on our balance sheet. We need to have reserve for a sustained period of a bad market. And I think most of people who joined shipping in the last 5 years don't remember what a bad market looks like, but I've been around for longer, and bad markets are a disaster and they can last very long. So first of all, you need to make sure you have your reserves. We keep a simulation of our cash flow, of course, so this is the base. And from a asset perspective, we have analysis of what we call flexibility of the fleet. So how much of our fleet can we redeliver in a quarter? We try to aim to be able to redeliver 20%, meaning our chartered vessels, right? Either redeliver. We have today about 70% of our vessels are owned and 30% are chartered. And we assume that we can scrap old vessels and redeliver chartered vessels. This is what gives us the flexibility, and we analyze it, and we try to be able to redeliver about 10% a quarter. This will give us, we think, the flexibility, plus a strong balance sheet. Always keep a strong balance sheet to be able to sustain, because we always look at the crisis as an opportunity, right? The minute that there is a crisis, vessel prices go down, and it's an opportunity to buy. So this is the balance.
And Shmulick, maybe a follow-up will be regarding, obviously, like the insurance costs. So we've seen recently in the news, specifically in the US, the bridge collapse that caused a lot of tension about who need to pay the money. Is it like the insurance cost, or maybe it's like other players in the market? How do you navigate maybe the negotiation in terms of the insurance? Is it something that you can like really like maybe ask them to pay like lower insurance, or is it something that depended on the overall market and not specifically on you?
So insurance in shipping, which is probably the base for all the insurance that we are seeing anywhere, but insurance in shipping is a mutual. So we don't insure in your regular insurance company. We insure in what we call the clubs. It's a group of ship owners. Of course, now it's very professional and it's run by outside managers that you join a club. You can move from one club to another, but you join a club, and according to your insurance claims record, you pay a premium. The clubs, by the way, are joined by what is called the IG, the international group above them. And a club itself actually underwrites a lot of money, but it's not that big. When you talk about disasters that hit the headlines, they insure something in the region of, well, $12 to $20 million, depend on that. And above it, it goes the IG. So all the clubs reinsure themselves. And above this, it goes to the reinsurance market. And above this, which the current calamity in Baltimore might reach it, it comes back to the clubs. So ship owners can end up paying the marginal cost above what is reinsured. This is more or less how insurance works. So we pay insurance based on our record. If you will Google Express, you will know that our record is not great. We had a huge disaster in 2021 when our vessel was burnt off the coast of Sri Lanka. By the way, of course, I'm not objective, but it's not fault of ours. It was the stuffing of a container and the two terminals in Qatar and in India that were not willing to help us with the vessel. And the sad thing is that the vessel burned off the coast of Sri Lanka, causing extensive environmental damage. And you pay, so your record is 5 years. And then every year you add a year and you subtract the year 5 year back. And this is more or less how you pay your P&I insurance.
And can you choose which club you can enter as part of the insurance, or is it something that depends on
Yes.
how much vessels you have?
So your premium depends on the vessels. So we used to have a very old fleet, which was very expensive to insure. Now our fleet is relatively young because of our new buildings and the vessel that we bought. So it's actually very, very attractive to clubs. If I can tell a story, we got kicked out of a club in 2019 or 18. Our record was so poor that one of the clubs refused to insure us, and we moved to another club, which is an incredible club that helped us unbelievably through the Express Pearl disaster. So it turned out to be, in my opinion, very fortunate for us. And now that we have a new fleet, of course, the CEO of the club that kicked us out came to visit and asked what we can do together. But you can move between the clubs. Of course, the new club needs to accept you, and there are rules about the premium that the new club can offer you. They must look at your records, but you can move.
And amazing to hear and very insightful indeed. And maybe kind of like moving aside a bit to the M&A side of the business. So we did a little bit of research, and like in 2021, you bought Brit Oil. Can you tell us about this specific acquisition and what led you to this acquisition? And how did it turn out?
Yeah, Brit Oil is an offshore support vessel company. Just a bit, offshore support vessels are a bit bigger and stronger tugs that support the oil, gas, wind platforms at sea. They and in 2020, during one of the lockdowns in Singapore, Tim was having lunch on Sunday, and someone approached him and said, "Oh, I'm a guy he knows." He said, "Now I'm the CFO of this company, Brit Oil, and we have some cash flow problems. Maybe you can give us a high interest rate loan for $5 million." And Tim never says no to anything. He first checks. So Tuesday, I get a mail saying, "Here is the financial reports, and what do you think?" I look at it and I tell Tim, "Listen, Tim, $5 million, you can buy the company. It's actually bankrupt. Why give them a loan?" And Tim said, "Okay, maybe we should look at buying the company." We negotiated with the banks. It owed quite a lot of money, less than $100 million, but I think 70, 80, close to $100 million to two Singaporean banks. It owned 21 offshore support vessels, 19 anchor handlers, and 2 platform support vessels. And following negotiation with the banks, we actually bought the loans from the banks and took 90% of the company together with our partners, the Perez family in Spain. And the reason why we did it is very important, I think, lesson. In a cyclical industry where investments are very, very long, the way I look at it, you need to look at a few things and make decisions if you are lucky to have a strong balance sheet. So if you can buy assets relatively cheap and then be able to run them, to have an operational commercial platform, a company like Brit Oil that can run them at more or less break even in bad times, and the order book is close to zero, it is almost inevitable that one day the cycle will come back up. And in 2020 and 21, all the talk was about peak oil and how we don't need oil, and nobody wanted to buy assets. And when we made the decision, the logic was honestly very, very simple. You buy the assets, there is no order book to speak of, and you wait until the cycle comes back up. And I remember telling Tim, we don't know when it will be back, maybe 24, maybe 25, we don't know. But one thing we are quite confident that it will come back, assuming that you think that oil is still needed. And that was the basic logic. And we bought. And then Mr. Putin decides to invade Ukraine three months after we complete the deal. So we were not that smart. We didn't know about this. But the basic logic is, again, like we said, it turned out to be much, much better than what we thought. Just to give you an example of how people are terrified in a bad market, the vessels, so I said we bought 19 anchor handlers and 2 platform support vessels. I just want to tell that the 2 PSVs, the platform support vessels, we actually didn't want to buy them. And our partners refused to buy them, the Perez family. And the bank, at the last minute, insisted that we buy them, or else there is no deal. And team being team said, okay, I want to do the deal. Let's buy these two PSVs. We bought them, the two vessels, for $6.5 million each. They were on bareboat charters, so we were not operating them. It was like a loan. We gave them to someone. They fully paid for all the operational cost, everything. So we got a return of about 4 or 5% a year. You think that the world was zero interest, so you had a good charter paying you 5% a year, and we bought it. In 2023, we sold these vessels that cost us $6.5 million for $25 million each. This is shipping.
That seems like a good deal to me.
Not a bad IRR.
Yeah, not so bad. So, Shmulick, thank you very much. And then we kind of like moving forward to maybe the fun question of this interview. So, you ready?
Yes.
So, first question is regarding hobbies. Obviously, I mean, CEO of a big shipping company, but what is your best hobby that you have?
The best hobby that I have, that in Singapore I'm doing it much less, but there is nothing I love more, is to play wheelchair basketball. It is by far the best thing I do. I'm not good anymore at it, but I enjoy it very, very much. And this is one of the first things I do when I have a visit to Israel. I coordinate my visit to Bet HaLochem to play basketball with my friends. I swim. I like to hike. I like any sport in the world. Any sport, anyone running after a ball, I can watch. So yeah, I like to read very much.
So maybe kind of like a follow-up question that we have is, can you tell us about the recommended book that you read?
Yeah, I'm reading now a very good book. I'm finishing it now. It's called The Splendid and the Veil by Eric Larson. It is about Churchill and his family in the period between his nomination as Prime Minister of England in 1940, in May 1940, probably, like the movie, The Darkest Hour. So it's 1 minute after The Darkest Hour when he's nominated as Prime Minister. And it will end, I haven't finished it yet, in mid-1941, when he gets the support of the finally he gets the support of the Americans, and Germany invades Russia. It's an incredible book. In a period, I think Churchill is probably the greatest leader in the 20th century. We are all sitting here mostly thanks to him. The way that he hang on between May 1940 under the Blitz that started in the summer of 1940 with no support, trying to convince the Americans to support, not to join the war, by the way, just to provide supplies and arms. How he managed it, how he was always honest with his people, how he led from the front. I think he's and he wasn't a perfect man. That's the beauty, right? I mean, he had endless problems. He was a horror. I mean, you read, if you want. Also, you can read his biography of him being a young man. It's an incredible book, also. So in an age where you have self-righteous, egocentric leaders like we have in Israel, to read about Churchill at least gives you hope that there is still a lot of good people in the world.
Yeah, definitely, and very inspiring. And maybe last question is we're asking it every other speaker, so it's the 10-year question. Where would we see you in 10 years?
Yeah, that was in the preparatory questions. I told you in the Caribs, But I had to rethink, Yossi. Actually, if I can be the general manager of Maccabi Haifa
Come on, I'm
football
Maccabi
club,
Tel Aviv.
this no, no way, Yossi. So that's something I would really love to do is run a football club.
Yeah,
My friends tell
definitely.
me I'm crazy because I will only suffer and it's the wrong thing to do, but I love
Yeah,
sport.
Nope. Look
yeah,
at Mr. Ofer who owns Atletico, right? Is
yeah.
so
You
he can always
Yeah,
draw your
but
way.
agree.
he's an owner, yes. I want to be manager.
Just the manager.
Okay.
Shmulik, thank you so much. This has been really great and a joy. Thank you for your time. I hope your day starts well in Singapore and that we talk again soon.
Yes, thank you. I enjoyed it also. Thank you,
And
Álvaro and Yossi. It was a
thank you
pleasure.
very much, Molly. Been a pleasure.
Bye.
Ciao.